5 years ago, we got one of the most important lockdown pop albums, Charli XCX's How I'm Feeling Now. I'm going to go in deep on that record today on the Pop Pod. I am Pop Sam Cam. Thank you for joining me once again. Before we get into this episode, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you're hearing, if you love hearing about pop music 3 times a week, hit subscribe. I promise there is plenty more good stuff coming up. Also, rate this podcast 5 stars. It really helps us with our visibility on platforms like Apple and also Spotify and YouTube as well. If you can give this episode a thumbs up, that would be amazing. Otherwise, if you want to chat with more pop music fans, come and join us in the Discord. The link to join that is in the show notes down below. Come and chat. We talk about what I'm talking about on the podcast before I've even talked about it. So if you want that insight, come and join us. Let's get into the episode. Rihanna news to kick off the podcast. She is releasing new music, but maybe not in the way you were hoping for. Since 2016's Anti, she's basically been on a streak of releasing no music apart from songs for certain soundtracks. She released Lift Me Up for the Black Panther soundtrack, and now she's giving us a song from the Smurf soundtrack. So that snippet surprised me because I was obviously expecting something pretty, non-impressive given that it's for a kid's movie, but that has a certain Rihanna flair to it. I don't know, I'm liking the beat, I'm liking her vocals at the end there, and I'm kind of excited to see where this goes for her. Obviously, she's pregnant with her 3rd child. I wouldn't be expecting to get her 9th studio album anytime soon, so maybe we just take what we can get here. Next piece of news is that JADE has announced her debut album, That's Showbiz Baby. We've been waiting for this record since she released her debut solo single, Angel of My Dreams, last summer, and she's been building up to this with a number of great releases, including It Girl and FU for Now. But finally, on the 12th of September, she is going to drop That's Showbiz Baby, and she will also be going out on tour in the UK in October. I will flash up the dates on the screen right here if you're watching on Spotify or YouTube. Charli XCX, who is going to be the subject of the podcast today, will be releasing the video for Party For You at some point today if you're listening to this when this dropped. Obviously, it's been a long time coming for this song, which dropped 5 years ago on How I'm Feeling Now, but it continues to gain. It's hovering around the top 20 on the US Spotify charts and within the top 50 of the global Spotify charts. So this could be a hit for her. She's recognizing that and she's pushing it, and it all coincidentally coincides with the 5-year anniversary of How I'm Feeling Now. I'm excited to see how this one goes. Finally, I went to see The Weeknd's new movie, Hurry Up Tomorrow, yesterday. That's a lot to get my brain around. I'm not allowed to say a lot about the movie yet until the embargo is lifted, but basically it supports his most recent album, Hurry Up Tomorrow, but also gives a lot more. It's not totally reliant on that album. It actually feels entirely its own separate thing. Following that, I went to the after party where Kite Renata was DJing, and I actually got to witness this incredible moment where it was The Weeknd, Jenna Ortega, Kite Renata, all at the decks playing songs, and they even dropped some of The Weeknd songs, including the Doechii remix of Timeless, and then we got Gasoline off Dawn FM, which is one of my absolute favorites, Justice for Gasoline, but it was a very cool experience to be a part of, and I'm interested to hear what you guys think of this movie once it drops, because it was it was really something. Okay, let's get into the main part of the podcast. Every Thursday now, I want to talk about one of the albums that I feel has been integral to understanding where pop music is today. And obviously, there's a breadth of things to consider when talking about something like that. In terms of some albums kind of influence the direction of sound. I'm thinking albums like Rihanna, like Robin's Body Talk, and also Madonna's Ray of Light. And then also things that change the way that we think about music or the way that it's released. I'm thinking things like Self-Titled by Beyonce. And then you've also got records like Lord's Pure Heroin, which really changed the tempo of pop. they're kind of going to be the albums that I want to cover. And I would love to get suggestions from you guys on what I should do. So drop them into my DMs, or I'll pose the question on Instagram and Discord and you can add it there as well. But today it is all about Charli XCX's How I'm Feeling Now.
I only do this party for you. Only do this party for you, for you, for you.
This was her 4th studio album. It obviously was kind of not meant to happen. The context for this record is that we went into lockdown, as you may remember, in around March 2020. And Charli XCX at the time had been kind of planning 2 albums. She wanted one that was more like, I guess, glossy and more considered and a real sort of pop record with a proper rollout. And then she wanted one that was kind of more ad hoc and a little bit more like the mixtapes she did with Pop 2 and Number One Angel as well. And this kind of opportunity fell into her lap, I guess, when we all get thrown into isolation and she has this time to work on this record. But instead of just working on it slowly throughout the time, she decides that she basically wants to complete this in 4 weeks.
And so that's why I've decided that I'm going to use this isolation time to make a brand new album from scratch. The nature of this album is going to be very indicative of the times, just because I'm only going to be able to use the tools that I have at my fingertips to create all music, all artwork, videos, everything.
That's how long she gave herself to make this record, and she decided that she also wanted to make it with the fans.
Sharing demos with you, acapellas with you. I'm going to ask you guys to help me make videos.
The fans had a lot of input. She would do Zoom sessions every week or every day even. She'd go on Instagram Live and ask for lyric suggestions. She'd play us like the skeleton of beats. She'd ask which producers she wanted us to be involved in the project. And it was such an inclusive kind of album experience, and one unlike anything else. And I guess it's such an anomaly to this period, which is funny because obviously there was a lot of people making music in lockdown, but the music that was actually soundtracking the lockdown experience at that point, for pop fans particularly, was people like Dua Lipa and Doja Cat, who were doing these sort of disco records, and disco really became the flavor of lockdown, I guess. Charli was doing something very different, and I guess Taylor Swift was also doing it in a very different way when she did Folklore, an album that came together very quickly. But Folklore had a sort of fictional lyrical style to it, if you want to believe it was fictional. I think that some of it was very personal. But Charli decided to make something that is extremely diaristic and extremely vulnerable, perhaps the most vulnerable record that she's ever made. She gathered together a selection of great producers, including A.G. Cook, who's her go-to, B.J. Burton, who's worked with people like Bon Iver, L Harle, who she's worked with before on a mixtape like Number One Angel, and then a producer called Palmistry, who did I Finally Understand, and has a very different sort of sound to anything that Charli had really experienced before. And the thing that I love about How I'm Feeling Now is how it juxtaposes these like really maximalist club beats that feel like euphoric, even, with something that's so vulnerable and contained and intimate.
I just want to go real hard. I just want to go real hard. Pink diamond in the dark. I just want to go real hard. I just want to go real hard.
And I think that's where it really struck a chord with the people who did love How I'm Feeling Now in 2020, because we're all stuck in the house dreaming of like being able to go out and see people and listen to music and be in clubs. And yet instead we're stuck, contained, and like forced to think about so many things, evaluate like so many relationships. And she is stuck with, I think, not fiance, maybe boyfriend at the time in the house. And obviously that they've got some like very intense feelings towards each other, but there's something about the relationship throughout the record that to me feels like quite futile.
This whole album is going to be about my relationship with my partner. We were going through more of a difficult time.
You've got a song like Forever that is obviously like eternal and just like gushing and hyperbolic.
I will always love you. I love you forever, even when we're not together.
But then you've got a song like Detonate, where it always feels like the relationship is maybe about to crumble.
I'm about to detonate, pull you close and then I'll be gone.
That's obviously exactly what happens after she does How I'm Feeling Now. And I think that's why this is quite a painful period for her to revisit. And even I think she said she's never really watched the documentary Back Together Alone that she made after this record. But it makes for such an interesting space musically because it does have so much heart to it. And yet it also feels frustrated in that it's not able to express itself in the way that it usually would. And I think you hear that on a song like Anthems that starts with like, I'm so bored, and then I want Anthems, New York. Like she wants that club experience.
I'm so bored. Wake up late, eat some cereal, try my best to be physical.
Then even in For Party For You, when it ends with the crowd like at the tail end of it and then just kind of like simmers out, there's something so sad about that because at that point when she released it, we had no idea when she was ever going to be able to perform to a bunch of people again. Obviously, having just ended the Brat Arena tour, we know what was going to happen after this record, and it's probably far more than she ever expected. But I just really love that How I'm Feeling Now captures that. It's interesting talking about the impact of this album because this is probably one of Charli XCX's least successful albums commercially, or certainly was at the time. Obviously now the Party For You impact has perhaps changed that somewhat, but this album debuts at number 111 on the Billboard 200. It comes in at number 33 on the UK album charts. Like, it basically doesn't make a splash commercially. It was never the point of the album to make a splash commercially. It's not like she was releasing Forever and thinking like, this is going to be a massive radio hit. And certainly songs like Claws and I Finally Understand had almost no commercial appeal. So I don't think these results are surprising, but it is surprising that this album has made no commercial splash and yet has managed to remain in the zeitgeist in some kind of way. And I think part of that obviously has to do with the fan base that would ride or die for her through anything and supported the mixtapes and supported this album heavily and knew that she was always onto something. Also, part of that has to do with the fact that critically it was a success. Everybody from NME to Billboard to Pitchfork ended up listing it in the end of year list, and it has an 82 on Metacritic, which is very good for the record. But I think the major thing is now when I'm thinking back on it is that this album tapped into something within pop music that I don't think anybody really truly understood until maybe last year or this year. And that is the idea of authenticity and kind of real-time art. And what I mean by that is Charli made this record with her fans over Zoom largely, as I said. The updates were constant. They were in real time.
I just finished an all-nighter session. It's 6:30 a.m. I had some vodka.
2020 is obviously the moment that TikTok really explodes, not the moment that it broke through because people are using it far before that, but it's the moment that it really gains kind of mainstream wider appeal with like different demographics who are not tapped into it initially. And I think what we've seen with TikTok over the past couple years is this like desire for fans to feel connected to artists and their creative process. And I think it's why you see so often these videos that are like, finish the second verse with me, or my manager doesn't want me to release this, or stuff like that. And it's become a little bit like fabricated now and it doesn't hit the same. But I feel like it comes back to this very moment with Charli and showing just how much you can let your fans into the creative process and how much they will appreciate and respond to that as well. And there's something about this project where the fans feel like they have some ownership over it because they did kind of construct it with her in various different ways and give their input. And I think particularly with a song like Party For You, which was kind of the anthem for her core fan base, this is a song that has been around for years and years and years, like almost 10 years, I want to say now. She played like a sketch of it basically during a DJ set with, I think, A.G. Cook years ago. And you can fact check me on this because I'm just speaking off the top of my head. But it's a song that fans had held very close to their hearts. And then when it finally came to this album, that was one of the only songs that she didn't create entirely within the lockdown period. And it was put on the album solely as a gift to her fans.
It feels like it's been on a very long journey.
And also, people have had access to like the sort of bootleg live version of it, some DJ sets and other things.
And her fans have kind of harbored this ownership over it. And what it's done is it's created this seed for Party For You to eventually grow. And we've seen it so many times with songs like this over the past couple of years on a much larger scale. I think even something like Cruel Summer, which was a song that the Swifties really held near and dear as the hit that could have been, obviously exploded and became one of her biggest hits. Obviously happening for Party For You right now as well, and finally becoming the hit that her fans always knew it was destined to be. But I think that comes back to harboring this kind of trust and engagement with your fans, and something that feels very real, very real time, and very authentic. And there was something truly authentic to the way that Charli approached this process, because she was getting onto lives and stuff when she was kind of crashing out.
Yesterday I cried, frustrated that I'm so obsessed with working.
Like, we saw all of it, and we know now from the documentary and also how she's spoken about this period afterwards that it was actually an incredibly emotionally intense time for her, and also one where she really wasn't coping maybe as well as she was putting out. And this idea of making music through this was kind of a distraction for the way that she really didn't want to sit in her own peace and quiet. And the fans appreciated that insight and that connection. And I feel like that is something that has just been carried across through pop in the last couple years. And I'm trying to think like how to explain it without just using the word authentic over and over again, because that's what it truly is. But I feel like somebody with like Chapel Roan, for example, we all connected with her initially because we saw her struggle. People really resonated and liked the story of her getting dropped in 2020 just after she releases Pink Pony Club. And then we see that journey throughout it all and her build up to what she is now. And I feel like Chapel has had a very real and a very just like unfiltered way of speaking to her fans. We've seen Doja Cat really nail the sort of live Instagram vibe in terms of being able to speak to her fans without any like window in between and let fans into her creative process, playing snippets and things from the record. And I feel like Doja's always done this, but I'm just saying as a guide that she and Charli are two of the kind of pioneers of this method of sharing music, I feel. And I just think it's no coincidence that we end up at this point that we are right now in pop music, where authenticity is favored above all. And it's because of moments like these that really proved that by connecting with your core fan base, by catering to them only, and by developing your artistry through them, you kind of are able to reach a larger audience eventually, because this fan base continues to grow because it's being like harbored so well, if you get what I mean. I may just be waffling, but I've just noticed how much fans really want to have a special connection to certain songs, whether it be Pink Pony Club, whether it be Party For You, whether it be Cruel Summer. Gosh, there's so many songs that this has happened with over the last couple years, whether it be even Breaking Dishes by Rihanna. Like, it just continues to happen. I think that part of the connection that happens with how I'm feeling now is about fans resonating with real-time emotion and seeing that process of then developing into the songs fully. And I also think you can kind of pair that with how much fans these days need to know the backstory to songs. I feel like one of the reasons that Flowers by Miley Cyrus really took off is because the internet spread that idea that his favorite song was When I Was Your Man by Bruno Mars, and obviously that song like references that. And then also for the music video, she was in the house that he cheated on her in. Like, so many different elements, and obviously the lore of Taylor Swift as well is so important to the success of her music as well. And Charli tapped into this in a really real-time and vulnerable way with this record, and I think that it made her fan base stronger than ever and really built them up to get to a point where a record like Brat can work, because she was already so known for being this kind of upfront, vulnerable pop star. And by Brat, that really all comes to fruition at a time when pop is starting to catch up to that authenticity model that Charli is one of the flag bearers of. And that's why I kind of see How I'm Feeling Now as a sister record to Brat, because I think that it really allows Charli to hone her skills in terms of combining that club like aesthetic that she has always been such a fan of, and that kind of like underground electronic sound that she has had so much fun exploring in the past, with the vulnerability and diaristic style that she is so good at doing. But also, from where I'm looking, it feels like she needs to create music and tell her stories in that kind of way. Like, it's just a creative outpouring that it feels like she can't stop, but has not always necessarily known the best arena in which to share it in that kind of way. And I think that Crash, while I do really like Crash and I think that it's got some incredible pop songs on it, I think that it's the record where Charli maybe loses herself the most. And I love that she comes back to it in Brat, because she just managed to tap into being so daring once again. And that's the kind of daringness that she really started growing on How I'm Feeling Now. And then Brat is just a home run with it, obviously, because then you actually get the experience of being out in the clubs, feeling people's energy, and the energy of Brat is so infectious. But then at the same time, Brat is dealing mostly with like issues of insecurity, anxiety, existential fear, feelings about her relationships, like these much larger thoughts about having children. It all just floods into this record.
We had a conversation on the way home. Should I start my birth control? Because my career feels so small in the existential scheme of it all.
And yet she's still able to have so much fun with it. And I think that's because the like journey towards finding euphoria on the dance floor also means a purging of emotion. And Brat and How I'm Feeling Now is that purging of emotion in very different ways, but also coming to a very similar sort of conclusion, which is that there is no resolution, but maybe we can find momentary peace on the dance floor. And I just really love that about How I'm Feeling Now and Brat in particular. And I feel like it's a style in pop music that is going to continue so much. I think lyrically it's a style that Lana Del Rey has also really nailed, particularly on a record like Did You Know There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard, where she's been able to just almost word vomit her feelings onto the paper and then build the song around that, which is a much different vibe to going into the studio, finding the beat, kind of carving out these perfect pop melodies. People are less receptive to that now. They want to feel like the pop music that they're getting is coming straight from the mouth of the pop star that they're seeing on TikTok, that they feel like they totally relate to. And Charli has nailed that vibe. And it all starts here at How I'm Feeling Now, which is why I'm talking about this record. I want to play a quick game, basically with myself, which is I feel like there are many songs on How I'm Feeling Now that could fit in different Charli eras with just slightly different production. I feel like this album brings together sketches from many different eras almost as well and fits them into the How I'm Feeling Now aesthetic. But with a little bit of tweaking, I feel like they could land on other records. And I want to tell you the records that I feel like they could land on. The first song I'm going to do is Party For You. Party For You is obviously a song that's having so much success now, which is what makes me initially want to put it on Brat. But there's something about the atmosphere of it that I think doesn't quite suit Brat. Like, even though it's almost a party song, it's not like fists in the air as much. It's a little bit like more melancholic than anything on Brat, which is why I feel like I want to put it on Pop 2. I feel like it came to be at around the Pop 2 time, and it's got that really like emotional vulnerability that songs like Lucky and also track 10 does. And when she does the show and she does track 10 and Party For You very close to each other, I can really see these songs as being connected in some kind of way. So Party For You on Pop 2. Next one is Pink Diamond.
I just wanna go real hard. I just wanna go real hard. I just wanna go real hard. Lip gloss on and I'm looking like a
superstar.
This one's tough because it's one of the most like crunchiest Jagger songs she's ever made. And I don't know if many other records are as kind of unsanded down as How I'm Feeling Now is, but I've always related Pink Diamond to Next Level Charli and songs like Thoughts off Charli, the self-titled record. And even though that album had some really clean pop moments on it, it also had some really intense stuff. So Pink Diamond, I'm putting on the self-titled. Next one, Enemy. Enemy is one of my favorite songs off How I'm Feeling Now, but I also feel like it's one of the most straightforward pop songs on it. And it's also got those almost like reverb-soaked drums that happen a lot on Crash as well. It also like melodically reminds me of a song like Move Me. So this one I'm going to put on Crash. The final one I want to do is Claws. This is one of the strangest, most like hyper poppy songs that appears on How I'm Feeling Now. It is literally almost like word vomit, but it's also like buoyant and bubbly and really fun as well. And there's another record by her that does that, and that is Brat. I feel like Claws would sit very nicely on Brat alongside tracks like Rewind, and even like I Think About It All the Time because it has that same kind of like endless sentence structure too. So it's Brat for Claws. I would like to know what songs you would put on other projects. Like if How I'm Feeling Now didn't exist, but you had all these songs that you had to find a home for, where would you put them? Let me know that in my DMs or comment on the video or the podcast, wherever you're watching or listening to it as well. The final thing that I'm going to do every time I do one of these album deep dives is I'm going to give you my top 3 tracks ranked. So let's get into it with number 3. And my number 3 song on this album, I think I have to go with Claws.
Like your mind, like your smile, like your eyes, I could die. Aeroplane, US fly, singing songs like Jeremiah.
Claws, I remember hearing this snippet when she was teasing it out, and it just felt so sugary sweet to me and unlocked something so escapist in that time when we were so contained, and it's never left me. I think that it's a weird pop song, but I feel like there are these moments of relief when her voice goes into the higher register that are just incredible. So I'm putting Claws in number 2. In number 3. In number 2, I am going to do Detonate.
Hurt me, no you won't hurt me. I'm about to detonate. Pull you close and then I'll be gone.
This is a song from the minute I heard that beat, I knew that it was unlocking something within me. It's just so well made in the fact that it manages to sound like it's such a shiny pop song, and yet it's all falling apart at the seams. There's something almost like tinny about the production, which I love. And I think that totally matches with the lyric of like, I'm about to detonate, pull me close and then I'll be gone, which is just such an incredible lyric. And I think just summarizes the album in general of like, she has a tendency to get close to people and then run is the vibe that I'm getting. And Detonate totally summarizes that so beautifully. And every time I hear that twinkling beat come in, I can't skip. I don't think I've ever skipped this song in my life. In number 1, it's perhaps a little bit obvious right now, but Party for You. I think this ranks in her top 3 songs of all time, maybe. It encapsulates everything that makes her so perfect. And I think it truly is like one of the Dancing on My Owns of our time, in that obviously there's something so euphoric and so head rushy about it, particularly that second verse, the one that's gone totally viral. But at the same time, as you can find some kind of euphoria in this song, and I've used euphoria so many times in this podcast, I'm sorry, but that's the vibe that this album gives. Even though you can find some euphoria in it, it's the melancholy that's the feeling that sits strongest atop this song. And that is just such a hard mix to get right. And she does it so effortlessly on here. It's one of the most vivid songs she's ever written. The idea of like throwing this gigantic party and like Gatsby style watching it happen, only waiting for one person to come, which is the sole reason for having the party in the first place. And they never come. And then the like absolute devastation that comes in as all those emotions flood at the end. And again, the song like is basically bashed apart, disintegrated. It's just such a perfect song. That comes in at my number one, and that kind of rounds out my How I'm Feeling Now deep dive, the first album to appear in this series, where I am going to look at some of the most influential pop albums of our time and talk about why they were so important. I guess if you need like kind of a Spark Notes condensed version on why I think this album's so important, is because it managed to untap an absolute real-time, unfiltered authenticity within pop music. It's not shiny, it's not perfect whatsoever, and yet it connects so beautifully, and it's something that we are just seeing more and more in pop music, and something that we saw explored on an even wider scale with Brat. That is it for today. If you love this album as much as I do, please make sure you let me know. You can have any thoughts about this record. I will play it out on the podcast if you send voice notes to the poppod@popsamcam.com. I'll drop that email in the show notes below in case you want to do it. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you like it and rate it 5 stars, and also join our Discord to speak more about pop music. That is in the show notes below as well. Tomorrow I will be back for Bop or Flop with producer Jono, and I will see you then. Thank you for listening.